Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us again on another Sunday night for our Q&A. I am so thrilled tonight to be having our first candidate for governor up here running in our series. It's Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy. I have been very fortunate to have her as a colleague and a friend in Richmond, and so I'm so excited for you to meet her tonight. Jen, how are you doing?
I am doing so well. I'm excited to be here. Excited to be here with my friend and former colleague, Sally Hudson. So this is great.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to hand things over to Jen to let her introduce herself very quickly because she tells her story better than anybody. But let me tell you just real quick, why I'm so excited to have all of you meet Jen. A lot of things a lot of times we get told what can't get done in Richmond. And what I have always loved and adored about Jen is that she is one of those people who sees things as they should be, not as they are, and is not bashful about putting in the hard work it takes to get from here to there. So if you see all of the exciting work that's going on in Richmond right now, and you are proud of the work that we're doing, please know that it is people like Jen who stepped up to run 4 years ago, who pushed the pace and set the stage for all of that good work, and that they are still looking ahead at what we could be doing even better. And so that's why I'm excited for her to tell you about all of the good work that we can be doing in Virginia, and why she's running for governor for all those reasons. So with all that said, let me just hand it over to Jen very quickly and let her tell you about how she came to public service and where she is today.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sally. I really appreciate it. So I'm Jennifer Carroll Foy, and I'm running for governor here in Virginia. And never did I imagine that I would be running my governor's race in the midst of a global pandemic. But COVID-19 has exposed what was already beneath the surface, that too many Virginians can't earn a decent paycheck, afford their medical bills, or get ahead. And I instantly understand the challenges that Virginia families face because I live them. As a working mom with two jobs, raising two 3-year-olds who refuse to be potty trained during a global pandemic, my husband and I pay a second mortgage every month called childcare while straddled with student loan debt. And if that is not the everyday Virginian story, then I don't know what is. And so I have actually gone without health care. I have worked minimum wage jobs and felt the pain of being hungry and not sure where my next meal is going to come from. And that's what we need in our next governor. Someone who understands the challenges and the sacrifices that Virginia families have to make, and who's willing to move with a sense of urgency to get things done. So you can be sure that I would never put corporate interests above people interests, because I was a product of a community where politicians didn't fulfill their promises. And I have seen up close and personal the disinvestments in communities and what happens and the result of that. Coming from Petersburg, Virginia, one of the poorest communities in all of the Commonwealth, with one of the highest child poverty rates and rates of unaccredited schools. So I am in this for a purpose. I am trying to start a movement here because that is what's needed and demanded. And we are not going to move Virginia forward by electing politicians and supporting policies of the past. We have to ensure that we build a Virginia where everyone has an opportunity to not only survive, but to thrive. And as a former public defender, foster mom, community organizer, and legislator, I know exactly how to get things done. I know how to put service above self, never ask permission to do what's right, and I will never take no for an answer when fighting for all of you. Now that's what we need in our next governor, and that is exactly why I'm running for office. Thanks.
Well, I am thrilled to hear that, and I'm sure that you can already hear why I've been so excited to work with Jen. We were seatmates in the House. Our offices were side by side, and so she was never far away. And from day one, was a tremendous mentor to me, showing me how to get things done in Richmond. I would love to hear you talk about some of the things you're proudest of from your service in the House, and how you think that's set the stage for you to deliver more as our next governor.
And so I have to say, one of the proudest things I've done as a legislator, it's not every day you get to change our founding document. It's not every day that you get to help accomplish something that people have spent their entire lives working on. I'll never forget, the moment we were about to pass the Equal Rights Amendment resolution, my resolution through the General Assembly. And I had a woman tell me that, listen, honey, I've been fighting for this before your mom was alive. And that really put things in perspective, because I know I stand on the shoulders of giants of the men and women who came before me who's been really working towards women's equality. And to finally make Virginia the 38th and final state needed to enshrine women's equality into the Constitution, well, that is a huge accomplishment and a moment that I will never forget. Because if we're really going to tackle sex discrimination, if we're really going to have pay equity and transparency, if we are really going to, address violence against women in a real way, then we have to have that constitutional anchor called the Equal Rights Amendment in order to make that happen. Because as we see, just, laws and statutes are not enough. So building on that momentum, I'm excited to continue with a Mama Bus bill. And what that does is, really bring home pay transparency, pay equity, paid sick days, paid family medical leave, affordable childcare, the expansion of pre-K to at-risk 3 and 4-year-olds, full daycare. I mean, these are the things that we need so women can finally reach their full possibility and potential. And so that's what I'm most excited about, even though I helped to keep all of my promises that I made in 2017, whether it's cleaning up toxic coal ash in every corner of the Commonwealth, where people in my own community have been poisoned by Dominion coal ash seeping into people's well drinking water. Some people have cancer in my district with pending lawsuits. So I made a promise to do something about it and was able to fulfill that. I have to say, during COVID-19, expanding Medicaid to over 500,000 Virginians is no easy feat, but we were able to get that done because, and in the minority, might I add, because it's that important, and to keep harping on it and to keep pushing for it and lobbying and advocating to ensure that everyone, R, D, and I alike, know how important it is for people to have access to affordable quality healthcare. I have to say, helping to end pregnancy discrimination. I met a woman who was pretty much fired because she was 8 months pregnant. She was having complications and she had to take a little longer lunch break, just a couple more minutes in the bathroom. And she was absolutely denied. And so reasonable accommodations, I mean, that should be the standard. And so working towards having more job protections, making our Commonwealth more fair and equitable for our more marginalized communities who have for so long been ignored and left behind, and then changing our United States Constitution, I have to say that those are some of the things I'm most excited about, and I look forward to continue to build on those successes as governor.
Well, that's quite the resume already, and I hope that those of you who are tuning in could hear all of that tremendous experience that Jen would bring to this job, both in her life in public service before she was in public office, as a public defender, as a foster mom, as a busybody in a whole lot of ways. And then also in the House, all of those great big steps. If you are just tuning in to join us, remember that we will get to your questions soon. So please drop those in the chat on Facebook and YouTube so that we can tee up what you want to talk about next. As I hear all of that, I can't help but hear how different the governor's mansion would be if we were to put a woman there for the first time, because the kind of tremendous passion and compassion that undergirds all of that policy is so evident, from the Equal Rights Amendment, Medicaid expansion, combating pollution, paid sick leave, paid family leave. You can just tell that there is that thread of care for everyone being tied through all of it. Talk to me about why it is that you chose then to take that step from all of this good work that you've been doing in the House to running for governor, because your race really is historic by any measure, and people should know why you chose to step up to do it.
Yeah, so some people will ask, well, Jen, did your journey for governor begin recently? And I say, no, it began a long time ago, growing up in Petersburg, Virginia. Petersburg, as I said, who have one of the highest poverty rates of unaccredited schools. To this date, there's only one school accredited in the entire city, and was named one of the most dangerous places to live per capita in all of Virginia. And that's where I'm from. And luckily, I was raised by my grandparents, and especially my grandmother, Mary Lee, a Southern Christian woman who had me in church 3 days a week, who taught me the values that I hold true today, who would tell me things like, if you have it, you have to give it. That service is the price you pay for your time here on earth. All of those type of things that she would instill in me. And so even though my grandmother didn't have much to give, she gave everything she had. I remember people would fall on hard times at the church and they would actually come live with us. So I'll never forget, at a young age, my grandmother had a stroke and became a quadriplegic. And having to sit at my dining room table with my aunt, trying to decide if we're going to pay for our mortgage that month or for the medications keeping my grandmother alive. Now that is the moment my journey for governor began. The moment I realized I was a part of a community that had been ignored, neglected, and left behind, that this is a woman who dedicated her life working at Central State Mental Health Hospital, but then when she needed medications, we had to cut her prescription pills in half because that's all we could afford to do. And why is it that I was forced to go to a high school that we had unlicensed teachers, we didn't have books to take home, and we were doing worksheets, doing 12th grade science class, but right across the bridge, right in Colonial Heights and Chesterfield, they have the best of schools, the best of teachers, and the best of technology. And might I add that Petersburg is majority African American, while Colonial Heights is majority white. And so when you see the segregated schools, you see the effects of redlining, you see the equitable funding of our priorities in our services, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the environment, whether it's our economy, you see the impact. And so I'm a product of that. And so one of the other things my grandmother would always tell me is, I hear you complaining about things, Jen, but what are you going to do about it? And so my do in response to, people having to cut up prescription pills is to expand Medicaid to 500,000 Virginians as the next legislator and delegate for the second district. When I see things like Virginia Military Institute denying women access to higher learning, people saying things like women are born inferior, that our brains are smaller, that we have a state, we have a status, we have a place in society, and we need to stay in it. And instead of complaining about it, applying and going and getting my head shaved bald and marching and sweating and bleeding beside over 1,000 male cadets, not to prove a point to, myself, but to everyone else that women, we are equal, we are deserving, and we need to be in the room. We should be equally educated. And I heard the voice of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she said women can do all things if given the opportunity. So putting an exclamation point on it, I felt was one of the things that I was charged to do. And then running for the House of Delegates. After seeing us, elect someone so incompetent and divisive and racist and sexist as a leader of the free world, and knowing we need to have a response to that, because seeing a lot of that rhetoric seep down into Richmond, seeing that we were still sitting in traffic for 2 hours going 20 miles, and we still had a teacher shortage that wasn't being addressed. So running for office while being outraised 4-1, while being pregnant with twins, but knowing none of that matters, because at the end of the day, we need someone in that seat who's going to get things done and be a voice for the voiceless and represent our community well. So going on and not complaining, but running and winning that race and going down to Richmond to shake up the status quo and in politics as usual, because that is the only way that we're going to continue to get things done. So that's how I got there. That's how I got here. And that's why we are in this moment.
Well, I think that's all spot on. We here in Virginia and even across the country, in Virginia, we've never had a female governor. No state in the United States has ever had a Black woman as governor. So while there has never been a governor who looks quite like you, there's an awful lot of people who could see themselves in you and in the governor's mansion, because too many Virginians know what it's like to attend crumbling schools. They know what it's like to skip their prescriptions. And so I think that's why it's so important that people can see someone like you stand up and say that you are ready to lead. You have throughout your time in Richmond always looked ahead at what we could be doing more to really push the pace. When you look at what we're doing right now, where do you see us falling short most? I mean, I'm proud of a lot of the work that we're doing, but I know there's a lot of work still left to do. Where are you really excited to continue to raise the bar for the work we do in Richmond?
Okay, so let me just take this second and applaud my friend, Sally Hudson, for all the amazing work. I have been following you. I've been following your bills and your work and your advocacy towards fixing our unemployment insurance process and making sure that we take advantage of, this time and address the backlog that we have, ensuring people aren't being denied and their benefits stopped once they've already started. Like, you actually have to be found like that you're not supposed to be able to get the benefits. That kind of makes sense. Just all of those wonderful things that you're fighting for. I'm just so excited and happy and proud. And so I have to say that there are a lot of things that's coming out that I'm really happy about. I know the session hasn't ended yet, but I see that the death penalty, or repealing the death penalty, has passed both houses. I see that there's at least a process that started to say that we are for legalizing marijuana, even though distribution won't start until 2024. With that, my only, caveat or issue, I want to make sure, I would love to see the social equity programs actually in the bill, right? Because if not, and it's put to the side and it's like, well, take it up later. No, this needs to be top priority. I would make it a condition, right? No legalization unless and until we have guarantees that social equity programs will be paramount. So there needs to be not only 40% dedicated funding to expanding early childhood education, which is fantastic, by the way, but it also needs to be money, solely dedicated to those social equity programs and what that looks like, and details, and specifics, because, words matter, these bills matter. And so the communities that have bared the brunt of our war on drugs and over policing and the disinvestment in their communities, they need to be the first up for licenses. They need to be the first ones up for expungements. They need to be first ones up to have their communities with day centers and more money to the community service boards who will help with diversion programs, getting people tied to services and prescription pills and everything else that needs to happen to uplift these communities. So, I mean, that's what I'm really excited about. And it does need to be, if you're on the road to making distribution legal, then go ahead and make the possession of it completely legal, not until 2024, but today. And so people are getting arrested today. So incarcerated today, communities and families hurt and harmed today. So making it legal for the simple possession of small amounts of marijuana for personal use, legal today. Let's see, I think that there's some other things that I would like to have seen a little bit more criminal justice reform, cash bail, for example, which has pretty much, in addition to, our war on drugs, cash bail has single-handedly caused mass incarceration here in Virginia. You're more likely to be held in jail pretrial if you are Black and innocent than and poor than if you are white, wealthy, and guilty. And that is a problem. We have a justice for profit system here in Virginia, and that needs to directly be addressed. And so judges and magistrate judges or judicial officers' hands are tied until we change the law and make sure that people understand that until and unless the prosecutor has the burden to prove that a person is a danger to themselves, the community, or will not come to court, they must be released. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to explain to a judge, Your Honor, I understand you don't understand why my client doesn't have $100 for bail. But when I tell you I believe him because he told me how he ate garbage out of the trash on his way to the hearing today, then I need you to understand that he does not have $100 for bond, and $100 is a no bond. And so it's that. And so that also tinges on a little something else. It's not so much something that can be done legislatively, but to continue the effort to diversify the bench. That's really important, because what I've noticed, you could change the laws, but the people who are the gatekeepers are sitting on the bench. And for example, I had my diversify the bench effort where I believe it's in 2016, we had maybe 5 Black judges in all of Northern Virginia. And last year alone, I was able to help 5 Black or brown judges get appointed throughout all of Northern Virginia. So put the first African-American women in Loudoun County, the first Hispanic in Prince William County, help put the first Black judge in the Fairfax Circuit Court in over 30 years, because representation matters, cultural competence matter. And so we have to put emphasis on that. And it can't stop there. It's about social economic diversity and LGBTQ plus diversity and, religious diversity. And that's what we have to keep striving and fighting for. So there are bills and budgets that we can do better at, but there's also other extraneous policies that as legislators we can directly impact, which is, for example, I was saying the diversifying the bench effort. But those are just some of the things. I mean, I could go on, but I am just so happy and proud of all the progress that we've made, and the majority feels good. And for us to keep it, we need all of you guys engaged and to keep showing up for my friend Sally Hudson and keep her in office. Because when I tell you we need principled, powerful people who will not back down from a fight, who's in it for the right reasons, I'm telling you that is Delegate Sally Hudson. And that's why I admire her. That's why I'm so excited that she's in the House of Delegates. And we need her to be the standard bearer and that gatekeeper to ensure that only good things come out and all the bad things are beat back.
Well, you highlighted a lot of really wonderful things about things you've already done to set the pace and really raise the bar, and more good work that we can do. I want to uplift in particular something that you said, because it's subtle and I hope people realize how important it is. You said something that we need to do, something that you tried to push us to do last year, which was to legalize simple possession of marijuana outright. That was your bill that you introduced last year. And I know Delegate Cole and I were proud to stand behind you and try to lift that up. That's something that's not yet in the plan for legalization of marijuana, that we will wait until the marketplace for recreational cannabis is all set up before we stop the harm caused by the penalties for marijuana from today. And I don't know how we can all say right here, right now, that we know that cannabis should be legal, and then still for the next 3 years continue to cause that harm. I was always taught, when you know better, do better. And we know better now, so we should do better now. That's the kind of thing that you have always done, is sort of set down those simple rules and push the pace for our expectations for what we can get done. Because we're not even there, but that was something that you were pushing us to do last year. And I sure hope that I can convince my colleagues to follow your good advice before we're done with this session, because that part we need to tie up. One of the things that is running through so much of what you just said, and I know is the foundation of so much of your work as a public defender, is the recognition that the harm that so many people are bearing is not just a one-off. It's not a mistake, not a coincidence. It's systemic discrimination. It's systematic racism, especially in our court system, but far and wide. And that's a conversation that we got, or a question that we got from Ron here, who's in the chat. And he was wondering how you, in your position as governor, would think about talking about that to Republicans who are not as inclined to think about racism as a systemic problem, but as more of a bad apples situation. And I know I've heard you talk about that as your colleague, particularly bringing your perspective as a public defender into the General Assembly, which is not often heard. Can you talk about how do you talk to Republicans about systemic racism?
Absolutely. And thank you for that question, Ron. And I have to say that as the first public defender ever elected to the General Assembly, I knew what I was getting myself into, which was, an uphill battle, because I'm surrounded by prosecutors, people who are on the other side of the bar, right? And as a public defender, I like to tell people, when I say I'm a public defender, I'm not telling you what I do. I'm telling you who I am. Because I could go on to be a lobbyist, I could go on to be a corporate lawyer, I can go on to work at White Shoe Law Firm and make, good money. But I choose to do what I do because it's my passion. And you either have that empathy, you either have that grit and that fire to protect the Constitution and people's rights, or you don't. It is hard every day to get beat up and come back for more. Because when you go into that courtroom, oftentimes, you have no friends, not the judge, not the prosecutor, and sometimes not even your client. One of my favorite things is I had a client tell me one time as a public defender, he's like, "Oh, I was appointed a public pretender." And I'm like, "Oh, that was creative." But there is this stigma that if you're not paid, thousands of dollars, that you're not going to represent people well. And I want to change that, because some of these public defenders throughout all of the Commonwealth are some of the most hardest working, dedicated, committed, zealous, competent attorneys I've ever met. And that's why I fought to get a public defender's office, right here in Prince William County, the second most populated county in Virginia, a majority minority county. And I was successful to do that because I know what's at stake. And people go into that courtroom oftentimes unprepared to defend themselves and do what needs to be done. So the way that I talk to Republicans is that, I know my audience. And so I may be able to move some people on the issue that this is a moral issue. This is a right or wrong issue. It's a racial issue. It's a civil rights issue. But, sometimes when I talk to my Republican friends, I couch it in what matters to them. Listen. Every day we keep a person incarcerated pre-trial, meaning before they've, been found guilty of anything, it's costing us X amount of dollars. That's taxpayer money that we could be using for something else, right? So wouldn't it make more sense that instead of, paying, for example, $72 a day to incarcerate someone, we pay $17 a day and put them on a home monitoring system, or just make them check in and get, by phone or get, substance abuse treatment or counseling beforehand, or get drug tested or whatever it may have you. Doesn't that make more sense? And so at the end of the day, my job is to get things done. And I learned that from going to Virginia Military Institute and being one of the first women to ever graduate from there. It taught me to plan and execute, to lead, to not care about other people's religious affiliations, their political parties, gender, race. None of those things matter. Our job is to get the job done. And so knowing who I'm talking to in my audience, that's how I talk to them, because at the end of the day, it's about moving the ball forward. And it's all grounded in facts. It's about what's important to you. So for some people, the economic argument moves them. For some people, the racial justice issue moves them. For some other people, it is what it is. But you have to actively lobby. You have to actively work hard. And that's one of the reasons, like, I've been able to pass so much substantive legislation and resolutions in my time in the General Assembly, because I move with a sense of urgency. So getting Republicans to come along is important, not because we have to, but because we should at least try. Right. And so I do believe bipartisanship isn't the goal, but it should be the vehicle that we at least attempt, because they do also represent millions of people. And so where we can work in a bipartisan fashion, I say let's. But some areas, my values and our values will not be compromised. Hard stop. But at the end of the day, I do try to bring Republicans along. Try to get them signed on to my bills. I try to sign on to theirs. I try to do the things that's necessary. Because as you know, Sally, there's two things that matter down in Richmond. Just two: respect and relationships. And if you don't have those two things, then you are not going to be effective. And so knowing that and figuring that out very early has helped me, be able to work to get things done. One of the most bipartisan bills I was able to pass was this last session, which was my broadband bill, something that Americans for Prosperity and the administration signed on. Sierra Club and Farm Bureau. I mean, listen, when I tell you I had Republicans come to me and say, Jen, good work. That's what you want at the end of the day, because they know that I will fight for people in Southwest and rural Virginia and people who don't look like me just as hard as I'll fight for people from my own community.
I mean, I think that's spot on. That's exactly the reputation that you built as a legislator. And I think I know, how much it does matter that we build those bridges with our Republican colleagues. There are people who say it can't be done. But I think we share the attitude that our job is to get along where we get along, but to get things done either way. And that's our job. I do think also one of the things that I learned in my short time in the General Assembly already is how much it does matter to have that public defender's mindset, and how much what we do is shaped by prosecutors. That we got a lot of lawyers in there, and they're nearly all prosecutors. We got 2 defense attorneys in the House. It's you and Delegate Don Scott, and you hold down a corner and a vision that so needs defending, that is always fighting for the little guy. And I always know, as someone who's not an attorney by trade, and you got a lot of bills moving past, whenever I would see you and Don throw up no votes in committee, I would be, there's a story there about how somebody's not getting a fair shake. And I want to know the rest of it. And then, you would take me to school and I would say, oh, okay, I'm with them. Because, you really do bring that perspective of fighting for everyone when you have to, when you fought for everyone your whole career. I think another perspective that you bring that I think is uniquely strong among the candidates for governor is your willingness to fight for workers and fighting for labor. In particular, I know that you already have some really strong standout endorsements from unions in this race. And I think that Virginia has not had such a great reputation when it comes to standing up for workers and for organized labor in particular for so long. And so we've got some folks in the chat who are asking us good questions about how you would go to bat for labor if you were elected governor. In particular, we just had last week a bit of a painful vote on right to work that, really, I think shook things up a little bit. Is just, one marker that at least in our current Richmond, we're not ready to go there. As you see where we should be heading in Richmond, how would you be pushing and setting the agenda for labor?
Yes, I am so excited, and thank you for what you did. I just have to say that running this race, one of the questions I get the most is about unions and labor. And I've been told, Jen, we've never had a gubernatorial candidate in Virginia who's running on a union platform, who's in partnership with labor, who supports full-throatedly, repealing right to work. Can you win? Can you win with unions? Can you win with labor? And my response is, it's the only way to win, right? Because even if we take it back, one of the last things Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., died fighting for was sanitation workers. And one of the things that he kept saying that, I want to emphasize is that it doesn't matter if you have a seat at the table if you can't afford a sandwich. right? If you can't afford what's on the menu. So it's really about economic justice. That is the, elephant in the room that's hard to tackle, nobody wants to touch, but it must be achieved, because we won't get racial equity without, economic equity, period. And the racial wealth gap just keeps continuing to be, exacerbated. And so that has to be addressed. And there's one place that man, woman, black, white, yellow, blue, green, all gets paid the same: family sustaining wages, benefits, pension, healthcare, and that's with the union. And so, when you like having the weekends off, when you like your 40-hour work week, when you like, overtime, when you like having child labor laws, thank a union, right? And so we have to continue to remind ourselves of these things, because there's been a concerted effort to dismantle unions in Virginia. And to dismantle unions is to dismantle workers. To attack labor is to attack working families. And they're all synonymous. And so that's my job, is to help elevate that conversation and lean in on it, because I'm here for working families. Hard stop. Right? The wealthy and well-connected have had a lot of representation in Richmond. It's about time we have a working woman representing working families. And that's what has to happen. So that's what this effort is about. So I'm excited to say that I've passed the most substantive package of bills to help women, workers, and unions in Virginia's history. Ending wage theft and the misclassification of workers, passing the bill to have prevailing wages for contractors, introducing the bill to end the ban on project labor agreements, fighting for a real, $15 minimum wage, not 1, 5, 6, 7 years from now that we have to revisit and hope that it happens, but $15 minimum wage right now tied to the index. So that's what it's about. It's about being in this fight and being there in partnership. So the reason that unions have come out so big and so early is because they know that I am in this to win this, and I am in this to ensure that we all move forward together. And I'm here to not just give lip service to people. Every day you keep hearing people talk about frontline workers, essential workers. They're great, they're heroes. But when they look at their paycheck, it says that they're expendable, that they're disposable. And so we have to stop with the lip service. It's not just about advocacy, but it's about action. And so I protest all the time, and I protest by passing bills and budgets that's going to actually address the hurt and harm that so many communities are feeling, and especially our workers right now, the people who are making $7.25, the home healthcare workers who get no benefits, no time off, no job protections. All of those people need a voice, and they've gone so long without having one. So that's what it means to me. That's why I'm in this fight, and that's why I am, happy to stand in partnership with unions. It's something that the Biden-Harris administration has ran on and won on. It is, legislation that Congressman Bobby Scott with the PRO Act has introduced, and is carrying and is highly supported. So this isn't a one-off. So the people who are in support of unions, we're actually in the majority, and the people who don't are in the minority. We just have to acknowledge that they're in a minority, but they're in a minority in leadership positions. That's keeping good bills from being passed. That's going to help uplift working families and unions everywhere.
Yeah, and I think it's part of our job to help build those bridges for people. You say that, you've done a lot of work to pass bills that help women and help workers, and those are so often the same thing. Mm-hmm. That their agenda moves together. All of those bills that you're pushing for paid sick leave, the Equal Rights Amendment. We sell people on the Equal Rights Amendment by saying you care about equal pay for equal work, right? Well, don't nothing close a gender wage gap faster than a union. And so if we can help people connect the dots between those two, I think we can really build that collective inclusive movement that you're talking about. Because you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people who count on union support in Richmond, but it's far fewer who are proud to run with them and for them from the start. And I think that is the kind of candidate that you have been from day one. You said something that touches on a question that we got from Lauren here in the chat, which is about the Biden-Harris administration, about how they have really started to shape their agenda. And it includes a lot of things that have been on the back burner for Democrats a long time, like unions and workers. When you think about being a governor and being our biggest face and voice to Washington, what are you most excited about when you see that administration come together? Who would be your partners in DC, and how do you view your role as governor of Virginia as our connection to our nation's capital?
Absolutely. So, I don't really have to make the pitch of why governors are important anymore after the Trump administration. You see that when there's a federal failure, that governors are the backstop protecting millions of people in their state or commonwealth from the hurt and harm that's happening. And so now I'm excited to actually have an administration that we're in alignment and we can work with. And so, like, for example, Biden's commitment to have 100 million vaccines in 100 days, and his mask mandate. All of those things are things that I'm in support of and will help implement here in Virginia. Because at the end of the day, wearing a mask, not wearing a mask is not a public, it's not a political statement. It's a public health issue. And as governor, that is my number one, obligation, is to keep the public as safe as possible. It's about health, safety, and welfare. And so I'm excited to be able to continue to build on dismantling a lot of the laws that Trump administration has put in, harming our EPA and our environmental standards and protections, whether it's helping to increase voter rights and protections. They do it on the federal level and hope we can get comprehensive voting right protection passed. But even here in the state, it is my job to ensure that we make movement to continue to build on successes that we have been, whether that means completely mandating the removal of the signature requirement from absentee votes. And, there's just so many other things we can continue to build on and to do here in Virginia. So to be able to have an administration that you see eye to eye, who's going to bring professionalism and people who care about other people back to the forefront is something I'm really excited about. It makes my lift a lot lighter and easier, I have to say. I'm not constantly having to fight against the federal government, federal administration to protect the people here in Virginia. But now we can work in a concerted fashion and as partners in ensuring that we defeat this invisible enemy called COVID-19. We create a successful post-COVID economy, and we move Virginia into the 21st century by celebrating our diversity, promoting our inclusion, and ensuring people know that we're not only the best place to do business, but also the best place to live, work, and raise a family, because we are uplifting our workers and people here in a real way. So that's what I'm most excited about. And as I see these things coming out with his executive orders, him keeping his promises, I am, more assured that we're going to continue to do even more bolder things going into the future.
Yeah, if there is, one upside to the last year, it has been reminding people how much governors matter, just how much influence they have really over our day-to-day tangible lives. That a lot of what DC does is cut checks and draw guardrails, but we do a lot of important work at the state level, and we need a strong governor leading the charge. It feels like now these days we've basically got a governor's report card every day on the front page, telling us how each of them are doing and keeping pace with those basic things, like you said, like getting shots out the doors. We have a lot of great questions coming in. If you are just tuning in, remember we got 2 spots where you can watch Facebook and YouTube, and you can drop questions in the chat on both, and we will try to make sure that we get to all of them. One of the questions that we have here that I know will be important to you, Jen, is not about a problem that's just brewing right now, but a problem that's been brewing for a long time, and that is our climate crisis. I think that one of the most heartbreaking parts of the past year, in addition to the very real devastation of COVID, has been that it continues to kick the can further down the road on the problem of climate change, which we should have been working on for years, but now have to confront even faster. What do you think of as topping the agenda for our governor here in Virginia when it comes to combating climate change?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And so I have to say, as a chief co-patron of the Virginia Clean Economy Act, we need to start there. I'm excited to help usher in the bill that made us the first Southern state to have 100% zero carbon emission standard that, along with you guys' amazing delegates, Sally Hudson, we were able to ensure that there was protections for cost-sensitive communities, that their utility bills are kind of capped. They can't go up over a certain amount, that we're able to get project labor agreements on offshore wind. But there are so many opportunities that still are out there that really needs to be addressed. For example, 2050 is way too long. We know that all of the experts are saying we have to make serious inroads by 2035 or irreversible effects to our environment will occur. So we can definitely do that. There's and we have to get a hold of, Dominion. And when I say that, we have to start bringing more transparency, more accountability, all of those things to the forefront. So I am excited to say that I support the legislation that's going to do that. Like, the rate reviews have to happen. I've demanded for Dominion to return the $500 million that they've received in over earnings from Virginia ratepayers, especially now during a global health and economic pandemic that we're experiencing right now. And the response is, well, no, because we don't have to. And we still get this, even if you force us to, we still get to keep 30% of what we took. And I'm thinking in my head, as a public defender, I've never had an opportunity to see where I had a client who took something that didn't belong to them. And then the judge said, you know what? You can still get to keep 30% of everything you basically took from someone else. I mean, how is that fair? How is that equitable? Why is that the law? I mean, all of those questions come up, and then you realize that they're the number one, they're the top, corporate state contributor. And then it starts to answer a lot of questions. And that's why they get to write their own legislation. And that's why, a part of the VCA that was written will allow Dominion to take additional $2.5 billion with the B dollars from ratepayers. And the answer from some legislators were either I didn't know was in it because I allowed them to write the bill and didn't have any idea. And the other one was like, I knew, but I just didn't say anything. Problematic across the board. And so we have to have better oversight. We have to have campaign finance reform laws. We have to have, tightening of our ethics and rules. And we have to start holding our monopolized utilities accountable. We should work with them where we can. I am proud to say that I worked with Dominion Energy to pass a bill to help small women and minority-owned businesses that allows them to bid up to 3% higher than everyone else for a utility project, and that bid still be considered reasonable and prudent. So that's the good work, right? And we need to celebrate and acknowledge that. However, again, when there are over earnings and there are things that's not in the public good that's happening, we have to hold our monopolized utilities accountable. So I support continuing to build off a lot of the progress that we've made. Let's also focus on the Clean Cars program, which I think will be fantastic. Our transportation contributes to almost half of our carbon footprint here in Virginia. So as governor, what I will do is I will have an executive order that commits Virginia to transitioning to electric and hybrid vehicles where we can. We need mass transit to be as clean as we possibly can get it. So we have to move unafraid and quickly into the green and clean energy future, which is something I'm really excited about. So those are just some of the things that I would do: tighten up the Virginia Clean Economy Act, focus on the Clean Cars program, and as governor, ensuring that our state vehicles are hybrid or electric vehicles, encouraging and supporting localities to have their mass transit vehicles also, electric or hybrid where they can, and help them to afford that. Addressing coastal flooding in Hampton Roads. That's why I'm excited to have, the percentage of RGGI funds going towards those resiliency plans, because that is a national security issue with us having the largest Navy base in the world and one of the deepest ports on the East Coast. We have to protect this as if it's a national security issue and an economic issue, which it is. And so making sure that we address what's going to happen in Hampton Roads, which is they're going to see an additional 1.5 feet of water in the next several years unless we do something immediately and treat it as the urgent emergency that it is. Talking to farmers, they want more money for, cover crops. They want more money to build fences to keep out livestock and other animals out of our riverways and our streams, so that way we can meet our Chesapeake Bay, goals of cleanup. So all of these things are extremely important, and all of these things are something that I'm really excited about. And even low-hanging fruit, like having tree canopies. So under Jennifer Carroll Foy administration, I commit to planting 1 million trees here in Virginia. And it's something that's going to help address people's negative health outcomes. It'll help mitigate asthma. It'll help keep our energy bills lower. It will help with green spaces and promoting Virginia as that agricultural, tourism place for people to come, because we have not been doing all that we can. So those are just some of the things that I would do that I'm really excited about, because I will treat climate change as an existential crisis that it is. I will listen to climate science. I believe in it, and I'll do everything within my power as governor to ensure that we have a clean, green energy future. Oh, and the number one thing, the moratorium on fossil fuels. We have to end our addiction to fossil fuels. So I also support a moratorium on fossil fuels going forward. And all of those things will help us move, quickly into a green energy future.
Well, I appreciate the thorough answer. Arthur asked for one thing, but we can't do just one thing. And so I appreciate that you gave the full portfolio of things that we have to do. And I think that the theme running through it is that we know what steps we have to take. We just have to have the guts to do it. And we have to get rid of the roadblocks between people doing what they know is right. Because like you said, clean energy and clean government go hand in hand in Richmond, because there's a reason we're not moving as fast as we should. Gosh, there are so many good questions coming in. Thank you for everybody who's writing. If you're on Facebook or YouTube and you want to talk about something else, please do drop them in the chat. Gosh, let me touch on what you just said, which is a good question here from Boyd, because here in the Charlottesville Albemarle community, where we're always talking about climate change, we have so many folks who care deeply about the environment, about agriculture, about our waterways. We've got so many clean energy companies rooted right here. I feel like this community is always trying to push the pace on confronting our climate crisis. And we don't always get heard in Richmond. It feels like we're just, banging down the door. And a lot of people feel that like that. Hampton Roads is at the verge of going underwater. And we've got real parts of Virginia that just don't, are not feeling heard as well. How do you think about being a governor for all Virginia, and in particular, reaching out to those parts of ROVA, of the rest of Virginia, as Boyd says, that may not always feel like they have a voice in Richmond, especially among Democrats, when you've got so many folks from Nova really holding down the fort there. How do you talk to folks out here in the Blue Ridge and further parts west and south?
Yeah, I have to say, and thank you for that question, Boyd. So I have to say, number one, you show up. Right. So I can't tell you how many times I've been to Pulaski and Page County, and I've been, in Roanoke, and I've just been so many areas. And the number one thing I hear is that, people don't show up, and that just means so much. And supporting our Democrats who do run in those areas. I'll talk to so many people and they'll say, I'm running, Jen, but I know it's an uphill battle, but they're moving the ball forward. But what they're not getting is support from us in Richmond or other electeds to help encourage them and to come out and stump for them and knock doors for them and show them that we care. Because even if they don't win, they're keeping some of these other Republicans from adding to more competitive seats coffers. And so that's helpful in and of itself. And at the end of the day, we all want to be seen and we all want to feel heard. And that is important. So I'm having community conversations with people all across the Commonwealth. And there's a lot of reoccurring themes and a lot of similarities. And so I know that from what things that I'm hearing is that, Jen, we want someone who's going to see us, who's going to hear us and not leave us behind. And my response is, well, that's exactly where I'm running. So I'm really excited to continue the conversation. And so some of the things I'm fighting for don't necessarily help people that look like me. It helps people who are suffering the most of the time. And it's people in Southwest Virginia. It's people in Delegate Kilgore's, district, which is one of the poorest districts in all of Virginia. And so when I'm talking about, doing a refundable working families earned income tax credit, right? That will help people who make $20,000 or less but file taxes. And again, that doesn't help people who live in my district. It helps people who live mainly in Southwest and rural Virginia. So that'll help give them some relief to be able to afford childcare and food on the table and make up for back rent during COVID. And that's important. When I'm talking about supporting a bond so we can have school construction, because some of our schools were built 50, 60, 100 years ago. So when I'm hearing about falling ceiling tiles and broken bathrooms, it's not just only, in Petersburg or Portsmouth, it's in Pulaski too. It's in Page County also. And so having those bonds available for school construction will have a dual effect of not only addressing a need for our education teachers and students, but also to help spur economic development, because those are infrastructure projects and people can get to work. And that's my ultimate goal, is getting Virginians back to work. And when we look at the Great Depression, one of the greatest and most efficient ways to spur development in our economy was with infrastructure projects. So I'm excited to do that. The opioid addiction, that's why I will support and put money towards telemedicine and mobile health clinics, because I'm hearing that people need the medications to help them wane off of opioids, but it's about accessibility. So transportation is a huge barrier, and telemedicine and actually mobile clinics will help address that. Extremely well. So those are just some of the things that I am excited about, and of course, building on my successes with broadband. That broadband bill I mentioned a little while ago, that passed in a bipartisan fashion, and it'll address one of the biggest issues with deployment to broadband. Now we have to build on that. So I'm committing $50 million a year towards the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative, which will create that public-private partnership, so that way communities with that last mile of internet can actually get it. I'm working with U.S. Senator Mark Warner's office, because I believe that by the end of my administration, I can have 97% of the entire population here in Virginia covered by high-speed internet. That means every school, business, and household. We just have to have the political courage and will to be able to do it and prioritize it. Our revenues are not, as bad off as other states. I have to say that. I anticipate additional revenue coming in. We tackle inefficiencies, remove bad tax breaks that we give here in Virginia, and modernize our tax code. And that's how we'll pay for these things. But we have to prioritize it. And a lot of the things that I'm fighting for will mainly benefit people in Southwestern rural Virginia. And I know this because I've shown up, I've had the community conversations, I've made the commitments, and something everyone will tell you is that Jennifer always keeps her promises.
Well, I hope you can hear in what Jen is saying the voices of all of the Virginians who are speaking through her, because you cover a lot of ground when you're campaigning, and some people get grabbed at an event and somebody tells you their hard luck story, and that's the last time they ever think about it. But in everything that you're saying, I can hear the person in Pulaski who stopped you and said, "Hey, I got a problem and I need you to do something about it." Another kind of person who Bruce here is asking about in the chat, that lives in every corner of Virginia, has done so much for our country, and is so often overlooked, are our veterans. Can you talk to us a little about the policies that you would put forward to support veterans in Virginia?
Yes, so thank you for that question about veterans. And so one of the things I'm most excited about is to continue to build on a V3 program, which has proven to be very successful. And what the V3 program does is that the administration will go and basically talk to businesses about the importance of hiring veterans, that their MOS, or like what they did while they were in the military, that experience and that knowledge is transferable to your job. So you might want to look to hire those people. And so when we connect more veterans with more jobs, we win. And so by the end of my administration, I commit to having 100,000 veterans hired through the V3 program, which I think is really significant. One of the other things I'm really excited to do is dedicate $1 million towards a veteran microloan entrepreneurship program. And so that's something that was actually recommended. And I think that by our veteran organizations, and I think that's something to help spur economic entrepreneurship here in Virginia amongst our veterans. And so that is something that will also be helpful, and I'm really excited about. I will also have and expand veteran dockets across the Commonwealth. As a public defender and being in court all the time, I see the successes of our specialized courts and dockets. So not only will I have every court have a drug court and a mental health docket, but also a veterans docket too, because they are a specialized group of people who have sacrificed so much for us, and the least we can do is to pay tenfold. And so ensuring that they receive the wraparound services that they need, that their specialized needs are taken care of, that's something that we need to do here in Virginia. So having veteran dockets to address the PTSD, to get them housed, because no veteran in Virginia should be homeless, to ensure that they're connected with services. Because one of the things when I get a veteran as a client, I ask, like, why are you homeless? Why are you not connected to this? And they oftentimes say, well, I didn't know about it. Right. And so making sure that they are armed with the information and we set them up in a position where they never enter into the system again is something that's really important. So having those veteran dockets, I think will be something that'll be really beneficial. And so those are just some of the things. And one of the top things I have to say, I've had many town halls, panels, and forums with our veterans. And the number one issue I keep hearing, and this is why I'm doing it, is to exempt veteran retirement pay here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have one of the largest veteran populations in the country, but we are losing our veterans to places like Florida and Texas and some other states. And so in order for us to, really put our money where our mouth is and say, thank you for your service, how about we not tax their retirement pay? And so that's something that if the revenues allow, I, as governor, will do. And so that's something I'm really excited about. And I have to say, with the multiple conversations I've had with my veterans, that is their number one request. The number one issue that I've heard from them is to make veteran retirement pay tax exempt. And that's what will happen under a Jennifer Carroll Foy administration.
Another very thorough answer. You can tell you've talked to a lot of people about what they really want. We have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 more good questions that we got, if we can. One of them I know will be near and dear to your heart. We talked earlier on about so many of the injustices in our criminal legal system, and about how we can stop creating more harm for the future. We got a couple good questions here from Monica, and then also from Red, about what we can do about the harm of the past, particularly when it comes to getting people out of prison who have been there for too long. Can you talk to us about how you feel about restoring parole in Virginia and what we can do to get more people out of our prisons and jails in this state, which incarcerates so many?
Absolutely. And so thank you for that question. What we have to do here is, I do support reinstating parole. And we need to have, if we say that we care about rehabilitation and restorative services, if we say we care about giving people a second chance, then we need to do that. And so what parole will do is, you'll have people who will be able to make those judgments and determinations. And so if a person is doing what they're supposed to, getting their GED, learning a trade, they have no, complaints filed against them while being incarcerated, trying to better themselves. We want to incentivize that. And so that is a great way to do it. We want people to be set up for success so they can be productive, returning members of society. And so that's why I support reinstituting parole. That's why I also supported Delegate Don Scott's bill. And it's a little bit, more difficult to explain, but in Virginia, if you're convicted of a felony, you serve about 85% of your time. Misdemeanors, you serve about half time. And so what his bill did was to change how much time convicted felons would serve. But it hinges on how well you do while you're incarcerated. So again, it goes back to incentivizing people to be of good behavior, to do things that's going to better themselves, to enroll in mental health programs, substance abuse counseling and therapy, to get their GED, to do all of those things. And it's something that a lot of other states have done and found to be successful. So we want to make evidence-based decisions and not just have a draconian, tough on crime mentality here in Virginia that has contributed heavily to mass incarceration, but has proven to be immoral and ineffective. And so those are 2 of the efforts that I, fully support and want to see implemented as well as possible. We have to continue to support our Department of Corrections here in Virginia, because when they take the time to do, case work for each person who comes in, they are more likely to be successful. And what that means is that when they're fully funded, they're able to take an incoming inmate, find out what their needs are, put them on a program, and then by the time that they're ready to leave, they can be fully successful, because they will also be given wraparound services. They will be connected to a job or help to get connected to a job. Their rights, they could be told how their rights going to be restored. They can find, housing, all of those type of things. And that's what we want. We want people to never come back. And so we have to put things in place that will make that happen. And that's why I also support eliminating the one private prison that we do have here in Virginia, because private prisons are built on a philosophy of they need a revolving door to remain profitable. And so they have no incentive for people to be rehabilitated. That is the job of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we need to take on the last private prison that we have here in Virginia. We need to institute those programs, trainings, and bring back humane treatment back to these prisons. And so those are just some of the things that we can do here in Virginia to do that. And of course, like I was talking about, reform our cash bail system.
Well, I hope you can hear the depth and the holistic nature with which Delegate Carroll Foy wants to tackle all of these problems as governor. I mean, there's really no shortage of good work to be done. And so it helps to have people who know there's a long to-do list. Let me, with our last audience question of the night, try to pick up one that Nancy asked. which is really about the job of governor and how you see yourself approaching it, because you do have so much experience from all of these different roles as a public defender, as a foster mom, as a legislator. But governor is an executive. And that is a different mindset and a different perspective. Can you talk to us about the specific perspective, the mindset that you would bring as a governor, as the chief administrator of the executive state in Virginia? How would you approach that?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think that I will pull on the most is being one of the first women to graduate from one of the top military colleges in this country, Virginia Military Institute, where I was constantly on a daily basis put in leadership positions. And that when you are in those moments, having to make, split second decisions, and that could have a consequence of potentially people living or dying, or, the consequences can be grave. You understand how to research, how to, make evidence-based decisions, how to listen to the experts, how to galvanize the people around you to get buy-in, to seek feedback. But at the end of the day, everything rests on your shoulders. And so you're able to, strengthen your spine and roll your shoulders back and take on heavy weight because you've done it before. So one thing that I can say, to the people of Virginia is that that I am battle tested, right? I will be going into this position on day one, ready to lead the Commonwealth forward, because it takes a strong individual to go into that courtroom every day and defend people's constitutional rights when it's constantly under attack. It takes a strong person to take a child that has been traumatized and neglected and abused and build them up in a way that they can be a productive member of society, not for money or fame or accolade, but because it's the right thing to do. And it takes a really strong individual. Listen, VMI is an extraordinary school only made for extraordinary individuals, right? And so you don't just, make it out of VMI, you survive. And so that I am ready to take up this task. And I have to be honest with you, I will also pull on the fact that I come from Petersburg, Virginia, and those life experiences and understanding those communities, which share so much with our rural and Southwest communities. I will also pull on the fact that I'm a woman and a working mom. And let me tell you that if I can work 2 jobs while potty training 2 3-year-olds whose only words they know is no, mommy, no, I tell you, this seems a little like light lifting to me. So, we can do it all. And like my aunt used to always say, if you want something done right and done well, have a woman do it. So it's about time that we have a woman governor who has the life experiences to bring to bear, who has a record of getting, criminal justice reform, women's equality, getting, healthcare done here in Virginia, and a person who has a proven record of never bowing down to special interest groups or corporations, and always standing on the right side of issues and with the people, even when no one's looking and even though it's hard. And so that's what we need. And that's why we're in this race. And that's why we're going to win, because we're fighting for the soul of Virginia.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who has taken time to tune in tonight. I am certain that if you spent the last hour with us, you can see why I'm so excited to have Jen running. In our time serving together in Richmond, I learned that she always sees the good in people, which is something that a governor has to do. That's something you would have to do as a public defender if you are trying to show that everybody's got something to give and you are going to stand up for the little guy always and forever. That is an attitude that we need in Richmond. I will also say that Jen is someone who sees through people. She has no shame about calling bluff and bluster, which is also something that we need more of in Richmond. We need more straight shooters, and that is something that she does. And as I'm sure that you've also heard, so many people would see themselves in Jen, people who have never had someone who looks and talks and thinks like them. I'm fighting for them every step of the way, and to know that all the way up to the governor's mansion, there's someone who they could have their ear and would be working on behalf of them every day. So we are fortunate to have someone of Jen's caliber as a candidate in this race. I am so grateful to her for giving her very busy time to be with us here in Charlottesville from afar tonight. And we look forward to the day where we can welcome you back. You are always welcome here.
Anytime, Sally, and thank you. And I just want to say you all are blessed to have Delegate Sally Hudson down there fighting the good fight. I haven't met so many people who is principled and passionate and powerful as she is. And she reads bills and she holds people feet to the fire. She speaks truth to power. And I tell you, I'm honored to call her my former colleague and most importantly, my friend. So thank you so much for being in this, Sally. I don't know what we would do without you.
We'll keep up the good work and we will be following along from afar every step of the way.
Thank you. Have a
good night, folks.